Did he even know I existed beyond the smell of polish and the hum of his vacuum? I froze mid-swipe when the elevator doors opened, and there he was, Dominic Carrington, the man whose face had haunted my dreams in impossible ways. The city sprawled behind him through the floor-to-ceiling glass, a panorama of wealth I'd never touch. Yet my heart betrayed me, thudding like a drum in a quiet cathedral. He didn't speak, he just stared, eyes unreadable, hands tucked into the sharp creases of his bespoke suit. For a second, the world narrowed to this me-mop in hand, and him, the richest man I'd ever seen. Then, he smiled barely, on the sound of it slid down my spine. That smile carried promises I wasn't allowed to want, a danger I was too far gone to resist, and yet, the air between us was electric with unsaid words. The next morning I stepped into the boardroom, dust still clinging to my apron. Dominic didn't rise from the head of the table. He barely acknowledged me, but the weight of his gaze pinned me to the polished oak floor. "I'm promoting you," he said, voice low, unyielding. My brain short-circuited me. The girl who vacuumed his penthouse and scrubbed his private bathrooms. What? Why? I whispered. He leaned forward, and I caught the faint scent of cedar wood and cologne. "Because you see things others don't. You notice the cracks, and right now, I need someone who does. Everything." The words were businesslike, but the way his dark eyes lingered on my trembling hands made my chest tighten. Something about this wasn't just about work. Something dangerous was about to happen, and we both knew it. I walked the hallways in heels that weren't mine, my reflection a stranger's in the polished glass. The office smelled of leather and money, the hum of technology hiding whispers of deals that shaped continents. Dominic's shadow always trailed me, sometimes too close, sometimes deliberately distant. I found myself memorizing the curve of his jaw, the angle of his shoulders, the way he seemed to exist in a realm I could never truly enter. "You shouldn't be here," I muttered one night, alone except for the city lights stretching endlessly below. He chuckled, stepping behind me until his presence pressed warmth against my back. "Neither should you," he said, his lips brushing the nape of my neck. I didn't move. Desire tangled with fear, a wire ready to snap. The first dinner we shared in his penthouse was a performance of luxury and restraint. Crystal chandeliers shimmered over a table set for two, caviar glinting like dark jewels on fine china. I tried to focus on the courses, on the delicate temps of truffle oil, but all I saw was him, Dominic, leaning back with that infuriating half-smile, watching me like a predator amused by its prey. "You're thinking about last night," he said softly. My fork froze mid-air. How did he know? I stumbled over the words, heat crawling up my neck. He didn't correct me, just reached across the table, fingers brushing mine, light enough to send fire through my veins. "Careful," he whispered. "Power like this, it's dangerous." My first board meeting as CEO, or so they thought, was a trial by fire. Executives in sharp suits eyed me with suspicion and barely concealed scorn. I clenched my fists beneath the mahogany table, trying to keep my voice steady. Dominic sat at the far end, expression impassive, and yet every subtle nod, every slight lean toward me, felt like a lifeline. When I outlined the strategy that could double profits in 6 months, he caught my eye and raised a brow, a silent signal only I understood. The room shifted, resistance melting under quiet authority I never expected to have. Afterward he cornered me, fingers brushing my shoulder. "You're not just cleaning offices anymore," he murmured. "You're cleaning house." That night, alone in the corner office that smelled faintly of his cologne, I touched the crystal decanter he'd left behind, imagining the warmth of his hands instead. Shadows danced across the walls like conspiracies, and I realized I had crossed some invisible boundary. My phone buzzed, Dominic's name flashing across the screen. I hesitated. He never called me. "Stay," the message said. Just one word, and it made my heart hammer against the ribs that felt suddenly too tight. I didn't argue. I climbed the staircase to the penthouse, each step a confession I wasn't ready to admit aloud. When the door closed behind me, he was there, dressed in black silk, the city lights painting his face in silver and gold. His confession came quietly, unannounced, in the hum of the night air. "I've never trusted anyone like this," he said, voice rough, hands wrapped around mine. I shivered under the intimacy of it, the gravity that made the walls of my own carefully constructed world tremble. "You don't know me," I whispered. He smiled, and it wasn't just the same dangerous charm, it was tenderness, impossible and rare. "I do," he said. "I've always known you." My chest twisted. How could he know a girl who swept floors and answered emails? And yet, here we were, teetering on the edge of a boundary neither of us dared cross completely. A sudden knock shattered the fragile bubble we'd built. Dominic's body stiffened, hands gripping mine for a moment too long before letting go. "They're here," he murmured. "The corporate police, lawyers, and rivals. They didn't know I wasn't just an employee anymore." He moved to the window, eyes narrowing over the skyline. "No one can find out the truth about us," he said. "Not yet." I swallowed hard, aware of the delicate balance we were walking. One misstep could destroy everything. Yet, even as fear settled like ice in my stomach, desire flared, incandescent and unstoppable. He led me to the terrace, the wind tugging at my dress, silver threads glinting in the moonlight. "Look at it," he said, gesturing to the city below. All this, it's ours to command, but it can swallow you whole if you're not careful. I traced the edge of the railing with trembling fingers. Why me? I asked. Why now? Dominic's gaze softened, a crack in the armor he wore so effortlessly. Because you're the only one who sees me, he confessed. And the only one I want to see me. My breath caught a mixture of exhilaration and terror. The following morning, the board was waiting, and Dominic was absent deliberately, I knew. As I walked into the room, every eye tracked me, whispered doubts hanging in the air. But I saw him in the reflection of the glass, framed in his office doorway, watching, approving. I realized then that power wasn't just in titles or money, it was in who controlled the gaze of the other. Each glance from him was a gamble, each smile a challenge. By the time I sat at the head of the table, I understood I was no longer invisible, I was dangerous, and he wanted me to be. Evenings became a battlefield of silent seduction. Sometimes, he'd catch me by the elevator, fingers brushing as we passed, hearts hammering like forbidden drums. Other times, we'd sit across from each other in the quiet of the boardroom, a glass of wine between us, tension so thick it could be sliced with a knife. One night, the air was electric, rain lashing against the windows. He stepped close enough to smell my hair, close enough to test the boundary neither of us dared cross. You can't leave now, he said, voice velvet and steel. My heart lurched. Was it a warning or a promise? Then the revelation came like a lightning strike. An email on my personal phone, unsigned but with intimate knowledge of my past. Hinted that someone knew my true identity, someone ready to use it against me. I froze, staring at the screen, Dominic's hand suddenly on my shoulder. They're watching you, he said softly, eyes burning with an intensity I couldn't name. And I will protect you, even if it destroys me. The vulnerability in his gaze made my breath hitch. We weren't just bound by desire anymore, we were bound by secrets that could ruin us both. The final scene of the night found us in his private office, the city glittering like shards of glass below. He closed the door with deliberate force, hands tangling in my hair, lips brushing mine not fully, teasing, a promise of more. The phone buzzed again, another threat, another warning, but the world shrank to the warmth of him. The danger of proximity, the impossibility of resistance. And then, before the kiss could land, the lights went out. Total darkness, silence, a single, deliberate sound of someone opening the penthouse door. Dominic froze. I froze, and the whisper of a voice I didn't recognize cut through the tension. We need to talk. About her. The library smelled of leather and old books, dust motes floating in golden lamplight. I traced the spines of volumes I didn't recognize, pretending to read, but every thought was stolen by him. Dominic standing impossibly close, the heat of his body brushing mine. His cologne cedarwood faint tobacco, danger wrapped around me like a warning. You shouldn't be here alone, he said softly. My pulse skipped and I dared to glance up. His eyes, dark and stormy, held something unspoken. I wanted to speak, to confess the way my chest ached, but words caught in my throat. He leaned just a fraction closer, fingers brushing the edge of my hand on the table, sending sparks that could have ignited the room. The world contracted until it was only the two of us and the electric tension that neither dared name aloud. The almost kiss hanging in the air like a promise. At the charity gala, the city's elite glittered around us, but Dominic's attention never wavered. Every flirtatious whisper from other women was met with a subtle shift in his stance, a protective glare that made my heart hammer. The diamonds on my gown sparkled, but his eyes held the only light I craved. When he slipped his hand around my waist, the world narrowed, the chatter fading into a background hum. I felt both cherished and caged, the danger of being his always present. You belong nowhere else tonight, he murmured into my ear, breath warm, lips brushing my jaw. I trembled, torn between the intoxicating thrill of his obsession and the fear of losing myself in a world I'd never truly belonged to. His possessiveness was a promise and a warning, a tension that left me dizzy and alive. Late at night, the office was quiet, the city lights bleeding through the glass walls. I sat on the edge of the leather couch, Dominic across from me, fingers tapping a silent rhythm on the armrest. Do you ever wonder if we're just playing roles? I asked, voice barely audible. He leaned forward, gaze intense, closing the space between us. I don't play, he said, voice low. Not with you. His honesty cut through the distance I'd built around my heart. We talked until dawn, walls crumbling, confessions spilling like fragile glass. I told him things I'd never breathed aloud, fears and insecurities, and he listened, every so often brushing my hair behind my ear, grounding me. By the time the sun rose, I realized I was tethered to him in ways that terrified and thrilled me. The morning after, a courier arrived with a thick envelope, stamped with the insignia of an offshore trust. I opened it with trembling hands. Contracts, financial disclosures, and at the bottom photographs of a woman I vaguely recognized. A note in elegant handwriting simply read, "She knows." Dominic appeared behind me before I could react, eyes narrowing. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said, tension in his voice. My heart dropped. "Who is she?" I demanded. The silence stretched, heavy, before he finally said, "Someone from my past. Someone I tried to forget." His hand found mine instinctively, a grounding anchor. But the revelation shifted everything. The man I thought I knew suddenly had shadows I hadn't anticipated, and I realized our growing bond would now have to navigate a maze of secrets I might never fully understand. I confronted him that night on the terrace, rain slicking the glass beneath our feet. "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded, voice trembling, thunder punctuating my words. His hand found mine, but it wasn't enough to soothe the sting. "I wanted to protect you," he said, voice low, nearly breaking from them. "From me," my chest ached, desire and fury warring within me. "From you," I whispered. "I've been falling for you, Dominic, while you hid half your life from me." He looked crushed, eyes darkening, and for the first time, I saw fear there not for himself, but for us. The rain soaked through our clothes, mingling with tears neither of us admitted, and the almost love we'd been nurturing teetered on the edge of ruin. A week later, I discovered that my own secretaries spent living under an assumed name after a corporate scandal had resurfaced. Dominic didn't speak immediately, only watched me, lips pressed into a thin line. "You lied to me," he finally said, voice a mixture of betrayal and hurt. My stomach twisted. "I had to survive," I said, trying to explain, fingers trembling. He stepped closer, the scent of his cologne filling every corner of my senses, and I wanted to forgive him, to forget the anger, but the truth between us felt like a chasm. "We can't keep doing this," he said, eyes flickering with pain. "Not if either of us carries secrets like this." And yet, the pull between us remained undeniable, a force neither could resist. During a late-night strategy session, tension simmered between us as reports and charts lay scattered on the mahogany table. Dominic leaned over, eyes scanning the same documents, but his hand brushed mine accidentally or intentionally and electricity shot through me. I caught his gaze, dark and unreadable, and my heart skipped. "Stop looking at me like that," I whispered, breath uneven. He smiled faintly. "Stop pretending I don't see you," he replied. His words were soft, almost cruel in their intimacy. Every touch, every glance, was loaded with a forbidden promise, a danger I wanted but couldn't fully claim. And in the silence, amid numbers and corporate strategy, we hovered on the precipice of surrendering to desire, knowing that one wrong move could destroy both of us. The gala at the Carrington estate was even more perilous. I felt eyes on Mirabelle's enemies, and old flames, but Dominic's presence was magnetic, a shield and a warning. He guided me through the room, hand resting at the small of my back, eyes scanning every angle, his jaw tight with unspoken menace. "Do not let anyone near you," he murmured, voice velvet and steel. I felt a shiver run down my spine, aware of the power dynamics, aware of the thrill in being claimed so publicly. The night danced with champagne, whispered threats, and stolen moments, each glance carrying the weight of obsession, desire, and danger. By the time the gala ended, the tension between us was nearly unbearable, a coil wound so tight it could snap at any moment. Then he vanished for 3 days. My phone rang endlessly, his office left in eerie silence. When he returned, bruised and exhausted, I found him on the terrace, rain washing over us like a baptism. "I was compromised," he said, voice barely audible. My hands reached for him instinctively, and he pulled me close, warmth pressing through soaked fabric. "You don't understand what's at stake," he admitted. I felt the vulnerability beneath his steel, the man who controlled everything in his world suddenly powerless in front of me. And in that moment, the lines between danger and desire blurred, and I knew I was in deeper than ever. A sudden knock at the penthouse door shattered the fragile calm. Dominic tensed, hand gripping mine tightly. A letter slid under the door, sealed with wax. I opened it, heart hammering. The words inside revealed a threat from someone who knew both our secrets, my past, his enemies, and an unspoken truth neither of us could ignore. Dominic read over my shoulder, lips brushing my temple as he muttered, "They want to destroy us." I felt my body tremble, the electric pull between us igniting fear and longing in equal measure. We stood together, vulnerability and strength entwined, realizing the world outside would stop at nothing to tear us apart. The confrontation was inevitable. Dominic and I faced each other in the penthouse, tension raw. "Why did you lie?" I demanded, voice trembling, tears threatening. "Because I love you," he said, voice cracking with uncharacteristic weakness, "and I'm terrified of losing you before I even have you." I stumbled back, heart pounding, anger and desire mingling. "I trusted you," I whispered, "and now everything is a lie." He closed the distance, hands cupping my face, lips nearly touching mine. "Not everything," he breathed. "Some things are true, even if it hurts." The air was heavy with confession, danger and longing, a moment that could shatter or solidify our fragile connection. The next morning, silence hung between us, broken only by the hum of the city below. Dominic approached, careful, deliberate, each step resonating with unspoken intent. "We have to fight them," he said, voice steady. Together my heart clenched, torn between fear and the undeniable pull toward him. I nodded, hands finding his electricity sparking at the touch. In that instant, the world of wealth, power, and enemies became secondary to the fragile, dangerous, and intoxicating bond we shared. And for the first time, I realized that love, real, impossible, all-consuming love, wasn't just a threat. It was our weapon, our shield, and perhaps the only thing strong enough to survive the storm ahead. That night, in the penthouse library, Dominic finally kissed me. It wasn't tentative, it was a claim, a confession, a battle and surrender all at once. Rain lashed the windows, thunder rolling across the city, but all I felt was him, every nerve alight, and just as our lips parted, a shadow moved behind USA's figure from his past, someone I hadn't been warned about. Dominic stiffened, hand on mine, eyes blazing with danger. The intruder's voice was calm, chilling. You shouldn't be here, and neither should she. My breath caught, the almost love, the tension, the secret soul of it collided into a single moment of terror and desire, and the world shifted beneath us. The city skyline blurred behind rain-streaked glass as Dominic slammed the contract folder onto the table. His jaw was tight, every muscle straining under a weight I couldn't name. I wanted to scream at him to stop, to remember us, but the words stuck in my throat. This is the final deadline, he muttered, voice low, brittle with tension. The office smelled of wet leather and electricity. I stepped closer, desperate to reach him, but the gap between us was more than just physical. It was rules, expectations, enemies, and everything he had sworn would never touch me. I reached for his hand, felt the tremor in his fingers, and understood that we were both on the edge. One misstep, one signature, and everything we had built, the stolen glances, the late-night confessions, the fragile trust could vanish forever. Late that night, we shared the terrace again, the city roaring below us, thunder echoing the turmoil in my chest. Dominic's hand brushed me, a spark, a lightning strike. I can't, he whispered, voice barely audible over the storm. I shook my head. Then choose me, I breathed, feeling the words scrape past every wall I had built. His eyes, dark and unreadable, softened just long enough to reveal a depth of longing that frightened me. Rain soaked our clothes, plastered our hair to our faces, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered but the ache of needing each other, the urgency of stolen time. I leaned forward, his lips hovered over mine, trembling. He pulled back, torment etched in every line of his face. If we do this, there's no turning back. The following morning, family pressure hit like a sledgehammer. Dominic's mother demanded he attend a gala with a socialite heirloom bride in waiting. It's tradition, she said, voice sharp as crystal. He sat across from me, expression unreadable, fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. I can't disappoint them, he murmured, voice thick. I swallowed my heartbreak. Then disappoint them for me, I whispered. Our hands brushed beneath the table. Stolen, secret, electric. The air vibrated with unspoken confessions, a dangerous tension we couldn't release publicly. Every glance carried warning, every touch screamed of defiance. The world demanded he marry another, but we wanted only each other. And in that quiet moment, amidst the pressure and expectation, I realized we were both willing to risk everything for a love neither had expected to find. I found him hours later in the office library, the walls lined with old tomes that smelled faintly of cedar and ink. He was curled in a chair, eyes closed, the weight of duty pressing down on him like a vice. I knelt beside him, hand brushing his hair back, and he let out a sigh I didn't know he'd been holding. I hate this, he whispered. I hate losing you to everything else. I leaned closer, voice soft. Then don't. His eyes opened, dark and trembling, and the tension between us shattered like glass. Fingers interlaced, we clung to each other, knowing the world outside demanded a sacrifice neither of us wanted to make. Desire and desperation collided, raw and unfiltered, a storm within a storm, threatening to break us both. A sudden threat arrived. A rival company had leaked information designed to force Dominic into signing a $1 million merger that would separate us permanently. The office phone rang off the hook, lawyers demanding decisions, and I watched him, jaw tight, fingers clutching a pen like it was a lifeline. I can't do this, he muttered, voice breaking. I stepped close, heart hammering, and pressed my hand against his chest, feeling the rapid pulse beneath the tailored fabric. Then, don't, I whispered. Our eyes met, and something shifted. The contract, the deadlines, the enemies, all of it faded beneath the undeniable truth. Neither wealth nor duty mattered more than us. And in that instant, I realized he would either choose me or lose me forever. Later, in the solitude of the penthouse, rain lashing the windows, we held each other like the world could fall apart around us. My hair was damp, plastered to my neck, and his jacket smelled of cedar and rain. I can't lose you, he said, voice rough, almost pleading. I rested my head on his shoulder, breathing in his scent, memorizing it. Then don't, I whispered. He pressed his lips to my hair, every kiss a promise, every touch a rebellion against the rules constraining us. For a fleeting moment, the storm outside matched the fire inside, our bodies and hearts claiming the space between us. Every second stretched, every heartbeat threatening collapse, but it was ours raw, forbidden, and real. The gala arrived. He walked beside me, jaw tight, eyes constantly scanning, warning me away from anyone who dared approach. Every whisper, every glance from the elite around us felt like an intrusion on our fragile world. My hand found his under the folds of my gown, a lifeline amidst the chaos. I wish I could just run away with you, I murmured, voice almost lost in the swell of music and chatter. He squeezed my hand, eyes locked on mine, fire and vulnerability combined. Soon, he promised, voice low, barely audible. Desire and desperation twisted inside me. We moved through the crowd like ghosts, touching, stealing breaths, moments, knowing every second could be our last. At midnight, alone in the boardroom, he finally confronted me. "I can't keep doing this," he said, voice tight, eyes shadowed. My chest ached. "Do what?" I asked, voice trembling. "Loving you," he confessed, words breaking free like dangerous light. "I can't control it. I can't control anything but you want that terrifies me." I stepped closer, hands finding his face, thumb tracing his jaw. "Then let it terrify you," I whispered. "Let it be us, no matter what the world says." Rain pounded the windows as he pulled me into a desperate kiss, every second a rebellion against time, enemies, and expectation. I knew then that we were beyond rules, beyond reason, beyond anything we had believed possible. The first real confrontation came at the office terrace during a storm. Lightning split the sky as Dominic stood in the rain, drenched, hair plastered to his face. "I'm choosing you," he shouted over the storm, voice raw, powerful. I ran to him, hand clasping his, feeling the electricity between us stronger than the thunder. "Even if it destroys everything?" I asked. He nodded, eyes dark and unflinching. "Even if it destroys me," he said. He pulled me into him, every kiss soaked with desperation and victory, and for a heartbeat, nothing existed but the two of us, standing in the rain, defying every expectation, every enemy, every rule. The next morning, the contract lay on the table, unsigned. Dominic had destroyed the merger, ripped it apart with deliberate force. "It's worthless," he said, hands trembling slightly, voice low. I felt tears prick my eyes, knowing the risk he had taken, the power he had forsaken, all for us. "You matter more," he whispered. I crossed the room, pressing my hand against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "And you mattered to me," I replied. For the first time, wealth, power, and enemies paled against what we had, a love that refused to be tamed. That night, the penthouse felt impossibly intimate, the city below glittering like fireflies. Dominic and I held each other close, rain still dripping from the terrace doors. "I thought I could control it," he murmured, lips brushing my temple. "I can't control anything but you." I rested my forehead against his, trembling. "Then don't," I whispered. Silence fell, broken only by the city hum and our quiet breathing. And in that silence, I understood that love had finally claimed us, fully and recklessly, beyond duty, beyond fear, beyond everything. Enemies still lurked, threats still whispered in shadowed corners, but for that night, none of it mattered. We stood together, hands clasped, eyes locked, hearts beating in desperate, perfect unison. "We'll survive," he said, voice certain, unwavering. I smiled through tears. "We will," I replied, feeling the weight of every struggle we had endured and every passion we had fought to protect. And as the storm finally began to subside, I knew that nothing, not contracts, not family, not enemies, could break the bond forged in stolen moments, desperate longing, and unrelenting love. The dawn broke, golden and unforgiving, spilling light across the city. Dominic held me close, every muscle relaxed, every breath synchronized with mine. "No more running," he whispered, fingers tracing the line of my jaw. I leaned into him, absorbing the warmth, the certainty, the finality of our decision. Outside, the world waited, ruthless, demanding and unyielding, but inside, we had carved our own eternity, fragile yet unstoppable. And in that quiet morning, I realized that all the fear, all the danger, all the impossible odds had led us here. To this, to each other, to love that refused to yield. Sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the penthouse in gold. I sat at the marble countertop, watching Dominic shuffle across the kitchen in a soft gray sweater, slippers slapping lightly against the polished floor. Steam rose from the mug he handed me, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with his cologne. Faintly cedar, slightly sweet, entirely him. He smiled, a quiet, private smile meant only for me, and I realized the absurdity of it all. From Maid to CEO's secret heart, from stolen glances to stolen moments, we had arrived here safe, warm, alive. I sipped the coffee, feeling the heat seep into my fingers, and finally understood what forever felt like. His hand brushed mine, and my pulse stilled. It wasn't the city skyline, the power or the wealth, it was this, him, us, quiet and unshakable. We moved through the penthouse in easy silence, the chaos of our past weeks replaced by the calm of domesticity. Dominic poured more coffee, placing a cup beside me, fingers brushing my hand, eyes soft. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" I asked, voice low, almost reverent. He chuckled, lips grazing my temple, warmth radiating from his chest. "Every day," he whispered, "from strangers, from a contract, to this." I leaned against him, heart full, the tension that had defined our lives melting into something permanent. The city outside seemed less important, the skyline no longer a symbol of power but of the life we had claimed together. And in that quiet intimacy, I finally understood that love had transformed our world, not by rules or obligations, but by presence, trust, and choice. Late afternoon found us on the terrace, rain long gone, sky fading into amber. Dominic pulled a chair for me, and we watched the city breathe beneath us, lights flickering awake like fireflies. I rested my head against his shoulder, the soft brush of his arm against mine steadying my soul. I used to think love had rules, I murmured, contracts, obligations, expectations. I thought we had to earn it, negotiate it. He kissed my hair, voice gentle. We thought wrong, he said. Love doesn't follow contracts, it finds us when we're unguarded. I turned to look at him, seeing the vulnerability and strength intertwined. The man who had once sworn never to love, now wholly ours, wholly mine. And in that moment, the penthouse felt like the first home I had ever truly known. That evening, we cooked dinner together, laughter bouncing off marble countertops, flames dancing in the stove's reflection. He tasted my sauce, exaggerated critique, teasing, and I swatted him with a napkin. He caught my wrist, thumb brushing the pulse there, gaze locked. You know, he said, voice low, intimate, I could do this forever. Just this US, my chest swelled. The simplicity of the moment was staggering. No contracts, no deadlines, no enemies, just a people who had survived everything and chosen each other. I leaned against him, forehead to chest, inhaling his scent, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart. For the first time, I didn't just feel loved, I felt irreplaceable, cherished, the woman who had saved the soul of a man who had once built walls around his heart. Night fell, and we found ourselves in the library again. But this time the tension was absent, replaced by warmth and laughter. He handed me a book, thumb brushing mine, lingering, electric yet tender. I wanted to start a tradition, he said, voice soft. I looked at him, brow raised. Tradition. He smiled, eyes bright. Every year, same night, we read together. No work, no obligations, just us. I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. This was the kind of intimacy we had fought for, the quiet reclamation of ordinary life made extraordinary by its significance. As the fire crackled behind us, I leaned against his chest, realizing that the man who once terrified me with his intensity now terrified me with how much I could love him. One morning he vanished briefly, returning with a small velvet box in hand. My pulse accelerated as he knelt on the carpet beside me, eyes unwavering. I should have started like this, he said, voice low, urgent. Not contracts, not agreements, not fear. I should have told you I love you and asked you to stay. My breath caught as he opened the box, a simple, elegant ring catching the light. Will you marry me not as an obligation, not as a contract, but as the woman who saved me, who claimed me, and who I love beyond reason? Tears pricked my eyes. Yes, I whispered, heart breaking and mending simultaneously. He slid the ring onto my finger, and everything, the storm, the threats, the chaos collapsed into this perfect, timeless moment. Later that night, we walked the terrace together, wrapped in a cashmere blanket, the city glittering like diamonds beneath us. Dominic pressed a hand to my waist, fingers tracing slow, deliberate patterns, and I leaned into him. This feels like everything, I whispered. Like home. He smiled, lips brushing the top of my head. It is, he said, voice soft. Home is wherever we are. You made it mine. The words sank into me, a balm to every fear we had endured, every night we had wondered if we could survive. And for the first time, I understood that love, in its quietest form, was the most unshakable power of all. Days passed in gentle routine. Morning coffee, quiet breakfasts, evenings filled with soft music and shared glances. Every moment reinforced the reality of us, and the penthouse felt alive with laughter, warmth, and belonging. He kissed my forehead as I left for a meeting, whispered, bring the world back to me. I realized the stakes had changed, not contracts, not enemies, but love and trust, now the pillars of our lives. Every glance, every touch, every quiet conversation was proof that we had moved beyond survival into flourishing, and nothing could take that away. One rainy afternoon, Dominic led me to the office terrace, rain beginning to fall like the first act of a play we had rewritten together. Do you remember our first storm? He asked, voice low, brushing damp strands of hair from my face. I nodded, lips pressed to his chest, heartbeat syncing with his. We survived that, he said, fingers threading through mine. We'll survive everything now. The rain soaked us, but I didn't care. It was a baptism, a symbol that we had emerged stronger, unafraid, unbroken, and wholly entwined. In his arms, the world's chaos felt distant and irrelevant, replaced by the certainty of us. That evening, he led me to the penthouse balcony, city lights sparkling below like endless stars. Look at this, he murmured. I leaned against him, feeling the heat of his body, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against mine. It's beautiful, I whispered. No, not this, he corrected, voice soft but intense. You, us, this life we built. My chest ached with joy, understanding that the pinnacle of our journey wasn't a skyline or a contract, it was this, quiet and fierce, shared in total presence. I pressed my lips to his shoulder, whispering, I love you. He smiled like never before, a pure, unguarded expression of wonder and gratitude. The following morning, sunlight bathed the penthouse in gold again. We sipped coffee side by side, legs brushing, words unnecessary. I watched him, realizing he was no longer a distant, untouchable man of wealth and power, but the man who had let himself be vulnerable, who had chosen me at every turn. I placed my hand on his, tracing the lines, memorizing the weight, the warmth. "You're mine now," he said softly. "Forever," I replied, voice steady, heart full. The simplicity of it left me breathless. Weeks later, friends and family came to celebrate quietly. No public spectacle, no contracts, just us. He raised a glass to me, eyes bright with emotion. "To the woman who saved my soul," he toasted. I felt the weight of every past trial, every stolen moment, dissolve into laughter and warmth. Our enemies, the contracts, the chaos-all remnants of the past. Now, only the present mattered, and it was ours. In the quiet moments that followed, we sat together on the terrace, city lights glimmering below like promises kept. Dominic wrapped his arms around me, and I rested my head against his chest. "We survived the impossible," I whispered. He kissed the top of my head, voice soft, certain, "and we'll thrive in the possible." I smiled, heartful, and realized that love, unexpected and relentless, had turned contracts into gifts, strangers into worlds, and fleeting moments into eternity. At sunset, we stood together, the city sprawling endlessly below. He held me close, lips brushing the hair at my temple, eyes bright. "I never imagined it could feel like this," he murmured. I laughed softly, whispering against his chest. "Neither did I, but now I can't imagine it any other way." He smiled, the kind of smile that reached into the soul, and for the first time, everything felt irrevocably, beautifully ours. The skyline shimmered, but the light I needed most was here in his arms, in our love, finally unshakable and real.